Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. My name is Jarrett Samuels. I'm the host of the podcast. Men, as always, I'd like to begin by thanking you for checking out today's show. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, listening to this wherever you grab your podcast audio content, thank you for checking it out. When you get the opportunity, visit thepursuitofmanliness.com. You can find this podcast episode, the whole catalog of 400 plus podcast episodes. You can see what's available in the gear store, learn more about our fall men's retreat, learn more about the herd, etc. I do want to remind you that the Wednesday podcast is sponsored by Loader Road Goods out of Coshocton, Ohio. Now, I'm going to be honest. I just looked up Loader Road Goods, clicked on the shop button, and now there's a cell phone holster there. Now, there was a period of time where I wore my phone on my belt, and there were some young guys that made fun of me. I got to tell you, it's massively convenient to have it on your belt. You call it a holster, that's a game changer. But that wasn't what I was planning on talking about. I recently got this guitar strap from Chris Kent from Loader Road Goods, and it is a fantastically made guitar strap. Now, here's the deal. I don't play guitar. So I've been giving these out to a couple people that I do know play guitar, and they love it. Well made. It's got the Loader Road Goods stamp on there. You put in the discount code, A Quiet Life, all capital letters, you'll save 15% off your order. Men, it's time for today's podcast episode. All right. Attempt number 3 at this podcast. I recorded this podcast twice yesterday. And I think I had podcast remorse because the more I thought about the episode, the more I thought about what I was communicating, or at least how I felt like I was communicating, it just didn't sit well. It felt like I was being whiny. I felt like I was trying to get people to feel sorry for me, and definitely not what I was after. So I'm going to try it one last time. This is it. This is what you get. Whatever you get is what you get. Let me give you context. So many of you guys know my father-in-law passed away on, I think it was Thursday, February 21st. On that day, when we were leaving the hospital and all the things, I went to my house. I recorded a podcast episode. I believe it was an Out in the Garage episode. Yeah, that would make sense. So I just knew that the following days after that would be really busy, really blurry, a lot of stuff going on. I'm not unfamiliar with death. As a lot of you know, I'm a pastor full-time. Nobody's asking me to do this ministry or do anything like this. It's not connected to the church. This is just what I do in my house because I feel like the Lord has laid it on my heart to do it. And so I'm not unfamiliar with death, except when it's personal to you. It just weighs different, right? And a lot of you know, you've walked through this. It just weighs quite a bit different. So you have to navigate that, and you have to figure out, a lot of things. And for me, it's been really heavy. Ever since that day, probably, I have considered stopping the podcast, stopping the ministry, stopping all the things, probably every day. And I don't say that as, oh, Jarrett, please don't. No, nobody's asked me to do this. In reality, most of these things that we get, especially in the digital world, after about a month or two, if they stopped, you would probably forget and just kind of move on to the next one or whatever you're doing. And I think that's what's supposed to happen, right? But I've thought about it just from the place of, emotional energy, mental energy. It's just different. And it's heavy, and everything that I am is connected to my father-in-law, as far from Christ follower, being in ministry, marrying his daughter, how I do funerals, how I do weddings, how I visit people that are all the things that I do on a regular basis. And so for me, that's been a really heavy personal thing to carry. And there's 2 things I want you to get from this episode, okay? And the second one will be me talking about Tribe, which is my thought going into this coming session of Tribe as we do the promotion stuff was not to do a podcast about Tribe where I try to convince you need this, because this coming session of Tribe, the reading and the book, so the Bible reading, the book reading, are heavier than normal sessions. Like we're doing prophets and we're reading a Tozer book. It's not the typical hoorah man book, let's go storm the world as men. It's a little different as we're understanding more about God. So I thought, well, I don't want to really try to sway people to be in Tribe if they don't have a strong urge to be in a community like this, but I'll get to that at the end. First thing is this. I've told men for a long time now, when you go through heavy things in life, if you fold, if you shut down,
And I don't mean take a break or a reset, or I mean like shut down. You know those guys that disappear, you don't know where they're at, you always have to kind of like dig them back up. I say often like pull them back up, right? Like they're going under the water, you're trying to pull them up, you're trying to keep them swimming as you're trying to swim yourself. If you do that, you don't have a story to help anybody else with. And I've used if someone says, man, I'm going through this loss, I'm going through this, what did you do when you went through it? And you say, well, I stopped talking to people, I didn't respond to anybody, I avoided all community, whatever, that's not helpful. And so for me, that's something that I have continually been reminded of. There was a phrase I still use, but I used it a lot with Pursue Wilderness, and it was just find your trail. And the idea is go get on a trail somewhere, go get somewhere and just walk, just hike, get your mind right, clear your headspace. Maybe you put some worship music on, maybe you have nothing on, whatever. You have to have clothes, but I mean nothing on in your headphones or whatever. Go find your trail. Like I'll go walk laps in the gym at the church, or walk the parking lot, or walk the neighborhood, or go to the state park, or go to real trails, whatever. But I'm going to find my trail because I need to get on it and I need to stay on it. And that's one thing that I've kind of tried to hang on to in the last couple months is I need to stay on that trail. I need to keep swimming. I need to keep going, right? So use the analogy of hiking. If you stop, you can do that and you can rest and you can hit reset, but you can't live there. You can't live at that stopping point. Right? If you try to live at that stopping point, some kind of authority is going to come along and shoo you out and say, sir, you can't live in this encampment. That's not what this is for. You have to get back up at some point and you have to keep going. And when you're with a group of people and you keep going, I think it's easier than when you're by yourself. Unless you went by yourself to really get that reset. For me, in the last couple months, there have been times that I've desired to be by myself, but maybe that wasn't the best thing. But one of the things I keep in mind is if you keep going, if you keep on that trail, if you keep moving forward, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, you just keep going, you're going to get to where you need to be. I'll give you an example. I think it was Saturday, a good friend of mine had reached out to our Indiana group and just said, there's a tragic loss in our family, and he was on his way to Atlanta. And as I got on the phone with him later on and we're talking, I knew there was nothing I was going to say that was going to lighten what he was about to walk into. However, I was able to share a couple things that maybe could have been beneficial, could have lightened his mind a bit as far as what he was walking into, just from the simple fact of what we were walking through or what had happened, 8 to 10 weeks earlier. It's not that this person doesn't know this, but again, you have that life experience, you have that shared experience. And the fact that you say, man, you got to stay on that path. You got to keep going. Left foot, right foot. Like you got to keep doing it right. And you have to keep going. If I shut down, remember what I said just a little bit ago. Every day I've thought about, let's just stop doing this. Like, why are we doing this? I deleted some social media accounts. I've trimmed down my social media posting and usings and all. Not that anybody cares. Just because you don't have the mental, emotional bandwidth to do. You're just like, my brain's foggy right now, right? I have this to do or that to do. But this is good too. There's some value in it because it keeps me on that path. And I don't know what that looks like for you, but you have to figure it out. You have to stay on that path. Guys that disappear, I've said 1,000 times, guys that disappear or they stay from a distance or they like to peek over the wall or whatever they want to call it. I've never found them to use their time as disciple makers. I've never seen them like thoroughly involved in the life of their church. I've rarely, if ever, heard them like leading their family in spiritual, devotions or going through the Bible or, like me and my marriage is so strong right now. And so, say, hey man, how's it going? It's good. And then you start asking questions. You come to find out, well, it's not going that good. Maybe that was their good. Maybe that was better than what it used to be. So that seems like it's good, but it's not really good. And so that's the first thing. The first thing is, man, you have to keep going. You have to left foot, right foot. You have to find your trail and you got to stay on it. Now your pace might be slower, but you have to keep moving. I don't want to be the guy that the group has to keep looking back and going, are you coming? Are you with us? Are you okay? But I want to keep going. There are people in my house who need me to be as good as I can be because they have their own stuff. I have stuff. I have a lot of stuff. I've had some really hard conversations already this morning before I ever got to the point of recording this. But when they walk back in the house today, there's a lot of life that's happened to them as well. And as a man, I want to be present for them. I want to be as good as I can be for them because they need that. They deserve that. And so you say, well, it's not good to keep it all bottled up. Absolutely. So you got to have the right community. This is where I'll get to Tribe. One of the best things for me in this particular session is the fact that Tribe never stops. You say, Jared, I work a full-time job. I travel. I have kids. I have grandkids. I'm single. I'm widowed. I'm divorced. I'm living in another country. I'm in a weird time zone. We got one. We got whatever you think you have. We probably have one. I had a guy email me the other day. I just saw it today about can pastors be in Tribe? Absolutely. It's a great place to get your soul refreshed. Now, overall, the pastor's engagement in Tribe isn't good, and that's probably for a few different reasons. However, we got one. And so for me, we have guys in Tribe who are as green as grass when it comes to growing spiritually. And we got guys who've been walking with the Lord for decades. I love being right in the middle. I don't feel like I'm green. I don't feel like I'm a great sage. I'm sitting in a corner. People just want to listen to what I have to say. I love being in the middle right now. And knowing someday, hopefully I'm over in that sage corner. Today's not that day. But I'm definitely not in a place where I'm on spiritual milk anymore either. We're growing in that. But to have a thing called Tribe that never stops. There's a challenge video this week. There's a Zoom call this week. There's Bible reading. There's conversations are taking place. And that keeps me engaged. Not guilty. Not checking boxes, because it's at your own leisure. So I can be in the car, or I could be at the church, or I can be in my chair, or I can be in the garage or whatever, and I get a message from somebody in Tribe, someone in our WhatsApp group or our let's say GoMe or whatever. It's not Me Too. I don't know what the other group we're in. I'm in a couple of, because we use these for different things to communicate. Group Me, that's what it is. I'll try that word. And I can get communication from these guys. And it keeps me engaged. Now, obviously, face-to-face will always be best. And I have face-to-face. But there are times, if you're walking through some heavy stuff, I don't think you're ready for face-to-face. I have had times in the last 2 months that I really wasn't looking for face-to-face. I was looking to just, sit and sulk, or sit and think and sit and whatever. And we're going to get into that later on in the month, or maybe into June, about the idea of God's camp, of making a place where you're at, an intentional space to connect with Him. But in that moment where Tribe never stops, it's like the waves just keep coming in, right? And I need that, because if it did stop, or I could just remove myself from them, again, I know me, nothing good is going to transpire. And so to have these guys, some of them check in on you, some of them have prayer requests, some of them everybody's got a thing. The reason why this is my third attempt at this podcast for this particular week, and this is not typical for me, I don't take 3 attempts, is because I didn't want to come across as if I was trying to be whiny to you, like, oh, look what, I'm not. Or I really hesitated mentioning the Tribe part, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that was a tremendous purpose and value in my life right now. Knowing that I can walk with other guys, and I don't share a whole bunch with them as far as, the last 2 months, but the fact that I can pray for these other guys, I can hear their stories, I can see their challenge videos, we can have conversations about, Easter weekend, or we can have conversations about their plans, or their kids taking notes at church, or those guys meeting up with one another, or whatever it is. It keeps you on that path. It keeps you on that trail. I don't know if you're like me, but if I pull over on a trail, I stop, and I sit for a while, I may not get started again. Or I may sit so long that I actually end up creating a greater hindrance later on. My point is, there are probably some men listening to this podcast who are going through some stuff, and you're trying to do this on your own, or you think that whatever you're going through isn't as big as what somebody else goes through. Listen, if it weighs on your mind, it's a big deal. Acts chapter 15, when James had said, we're going to write a letter to the Gentiles, the whole wrestling match of circumcision or uncircumcision, one of the things the letter starts off with is saying is these men have unsettled your mind. if you look into that, it's essentially equating it to ravaging your soul. Or Josephus says it's like an army going in and just pillaging the place where all these people lived. You know as well as I do, there are things in your life that are weighing on you mentally that start to hinder you physically. Like when I really start to have a stressor, I can feel it in my shoulders and neck, and I know with my attitude, I know with the way I eat, I know with the way I spend my time, the kind of energy levels I have or don't have, the way I sleep or don't sleep. As I said, I had a difficult conversation this morning. I thought about it all night. First thing I thought about today when I woke up. And if I'm honest, I thought about it throughout the middle of the night when I woke up. It weighed on my mind until the conversation was over. But there's still ramifications of that conversation. You have stuff too. It can be physical, it can be mental, spiritual, relational, financial. You have things. And I'm not saying in Tribe fixes all that ails you, but being with men of God who are going the same direction, there's a massive advantage to that. On one hand, you got guys who will walk with you. On the other hand, it helps you not just throw yourself a pity party. You say, but I got to keep going. I got to keep going because I'm looking at the clock and I know in about 4.5 hours, 5 hours, somewhere in there, roughly 4 people, maybe 5, I don't know, 4 people will walk in this house, some of them together, some of them at different times. And whether they speak it or not, they're going to need me to be as good as I can be. They're going to need me to be as mentally clear, as mentally healthy, as physically present as I can be. They may not convey that, but deep in their heart, it's a desire because you've had it too. And so if I can be present, if I can listen better, if I'm more attentive, if I'm physically able to engage and to help and to do and to go and to do all the things, it changes your camp. It changes your environment. And in seasons where you're all walking through this stuff, if the point man, if the head of the home can be as good as he can be in that moment because he's stayed on the trail, he stayed in community, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache. But that guy that gets in the corner and shrivels up or eats himself into a stupor or throws a pity party or suddenly doesn't come home anymore or spends all the money or gets into an addiction or gets into a vice or whatever, nothing good's going to come of that. Brother, you know it. Nothing good is going to come from it. So if you haven't been on one, find your trail. Get on it. Get on that narrow road. Stay on it. Left foot, right foot. Do the next right thing. And then I tell you, you need to get in community. However you need to do that, that's up to you. If you're listening to this or watching this before May 19th, the door is still open to be in Tribe if you want to be a part of it. If you don't, hey, I totally understand that. But get one somewhere and be consistent in it. Be committed to it. Show up well. See what happens. Men, thank you for listening. Thank you guys who watch, subscribe, share the show. Let's keep pursuing biblical manliness.